Hello, flute friends. I'm Matthew Allison, founder of Solo of the Month and manager of marketing for Flute World Company. Today, I have the privilege to chat with Master Sergeant Megan Ensor, Principal Piccolo of the United States Air Force Concert Band, based in Washington, D.C. In addition to her service, Megan is a clinician and teacher and the author of Flute and Piccolo excerpts for Wind Band. She's also known as the PiccNinja. Now, Megan, in my time of playing flute, wind ensemble music has increased in prevalence, in difficulty, and in popularity. The repertoire is seemingly becoming more loved as well as more important to learn. I would like to learn more about your viewpoint of wind band music and how and why your passion began in performing and teaching it. So let's start with, what were some of your favorite band pieces as a student?
Oh man. Well, I've always been a band nerd from the very beginning. And when I was going through the St. Philip Parochial School band that had all of 12 people in it, I got introduced to wonderful standards known as the Black Horse Troop March by Sousa, Danny Boy from Granger. And that basically progressed into honor bands in high school, where I got to do bigger regional things. And I got to play Overture to Candide. I got to play Gallup, a lot of other standards that at the time I didn't know that they were band standards. I just thought it was really fun music, and to play in a big, huge, loud band just felt like so much fun. And my love for it just kind of went from there. So some of the standards like that are definitely some of my earliest memories of my favorites.
Were wind band excerpts part of your normal practice before you went to the first job?
Nope, not at all. I didn't know that really wind band was a thing other than something you did in high school or something I was going to have to do in college. And so I learned the pieces as I saw them in my folder. And as I got into college and I started kind of seeing some things repeating, that's when I began to realize that there actually was like a band canon. And there were pieces that, you kind of had to know.
So if you weren't specifically studying wind band music, what kind of resources were you using? What books were you using? What were you studying and practicing?
I was doing very traditional things. I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I'm considered what's called a Coomer kid. Wendy Coomer is the flute mom of Pittsburgh, or she was back in the late 90s when I was in high school. And so she had us learning all the Taffanel and Gobert scales. She introduced us to the Anderson etudes and all of the NFA competition music, so flute music by French composers. That was a standard thing, the Mozarts. And when I got into college, my freshman year at the University of Akron with George Pope, I began keeping up on Taffanel Gobert, but I got introduced to the Reichert exercises, the Trevor Whitone book, and Marcel Moïse, the Melodious Progressive Studies, Drouet etudes, started to go there. And then Carl Gaylert was my really first big thing into, modern music, basically. And so that's basically, where it was. And band was never a part of it, other than I was in wind ensemble for college, and that was it.
Yeah. So from looking back at your experience of what you were studying, did you think that something was missing, or do you find something missing?
It really wasn't until I was getting close to graduating college. I was a music education major. I wanted to be the next great middle school band director of America. People think I'm nuts, but I love that age group. And it was during then that I started realizing how important of a genre band is, just to music and music education in general, how accessible it is, and how it's very easily relatable to life. The composers are now writing based off of their own experiences, or they have funny titles, and it's a very easy medium to make classical music very accessible even to young audiences. And so through there, that's when I started to look more into the importance of band and how I can relate it to my own teaching and everything. And then through there, I just started discovering all of these pieces that flute is a big part of it. And then piccolo is a big part of it. And then that just led me down that rabbit hole of realizing how much there is out there, and then how little references there are there to learning more about it other than playing in a band and playing the parts. There's no actual book or anything near there. And I decided I really needed to fill that gap.
Yeah, and I think that your book does a great job of that. The performance needs of a flute player in a wind band, are they similar or different than that of an orchestral flutist? Is the way that you practice similar as you would if you were preparing to play an orchestra, or do you find it to be a little bit different performing for wind band?
No, I don't find a difference between the two, actually. I'm practicing flute and I'm practicing piccolo, and I'm practicing to be the best flutist and piccoloist that I can be when I'm in the practice room. I would say the only difference between the two is the equipment that I play on. Because I'm playing in a band, it's louder. So I basically need more free blowing instruments. So that's, really what it comes down to. But for the most part, I'm practicing my scales, and I'm working with a metronome and a tuner all the time. And, I still practice my etudes and working on my technique and my sound. And yeah, I approach it very simply of I'm a flutist or I'm a piccoloist, and that's how I practice. I just happen to play in a band ensemble instead of an orchestra.
With Solo of the Month, we work with a lot of adult amateur students, and they like to kind of collect flutist specific regimes of how you divide your practice time. Would you be willing to tell me and tell us how you would section off a half an hour practice or an hour practice or a 2 hour practice, how you would spend your time in that?
Oh, a 2 hour practice session sounds glorious right now.
You have two kids, is that right?
I have a 5 and a almost 7-year-old who reminds me daily that he's almost 7. And I have, a husband and a cat and a dog. I mean, I'm living the normal dual income house with the white picket fence life. I'm busy. So I don't normally get 2 hours. So a lot of my practice sessions, actually, when I do, if I get a solid hour every day, that's a great week for me. Because I have a half hour, max 45 minutes to warm up. So for me, the first thing that I tackle is, obviously warming up my face, and the traditional Taffanel and Gobert, or the Moe's long tones of going down chromatically step by step. That actually, it's too much time for me anymore. Not to say don't do it, but I would focus on, find the parts of your face that don't feel so good and kind of focus in on there. For me, what gets the job done quick is I work on my harmonics. I start with the open C, and I just kind of work my way down to low C. And then from there, this is more of a Trevor Y technique. His tone book technique is I basically start going up the harmonic series. I go, C, C, and then I go to an open C. And the whole thought process behind that is the flute is built on harmonics, just like brass instruments. So the faster you can hone in on your harmonics, the faster your ranges are just going to be there. And then from there, if everything feels good, I don't spend a ton of time on it if my face feels good. And then from there, I go right into my scales. But again, I don't have a lot of time. So I like the Reichert exercises. I like number 1, number 3. I'm at an ability now where I can kind of fly through them. But I do like how compact they are, and you get all the major and minor scales, you get some intervals. And I like especially 2 and 3 because they work on those intervals that really can be trouble spots. So it helps to warm up your face more. And then from there, I'll dive right into, I've done some tone, I've done some scales, I'll dive right into whatever I need to work on for the day. So if it's flute or piccolo, it's kind of the same. I'll do record scales on piccolo, I'll do harmonics on piccolo, and then I'll just kind of gauge my practice session from there based off of what really needs to be accomplished that day.
Do you spend equal times warming up both instruments, the flute and piccolo?
No, I don't. I'm one of those rare people, maybe. I warm up on what I need to warm up on that day. And in some cases, the benefits of being versatile on both instruments is one instrument tends to warm up the other, if that makes sense physically. Sometimes if I will warm up on piccolo first, and it makes an easy transition to flute, or piccolo's not working that morning, so I will warm up on flute to make, the piccolo. So it makes the trade-off much easier, because the way that I approach both instruments is the basic physical setup is the same. I just think more higher range embouchure when I'm transitioning to piccolo. So as long as everything is in working order, then it's just a matter of, honing in my tone.
Well, thank you for sharing that structure of your practice. And speaking of structure, military life seems like it would have quite a lot of structure, which could maybe influence positive practice habits when you have the time. But I know for many, it's hard to think of the word military and the word flute in the same sentence. And I was just wondering if you could just describe a little bit about your personal military experience.
I joined the military back in 2004, so I've been in for 19 years. And for the most part, it has been an extremely rewarding experience. When you take the audition, especially with the Air Force bands, you have to audition to win the spot, and then you have to go to your recruiter. So I went through basic training, just like every person in the Air Force bands does. And basic is not as bad as everybody makes it seem. There's definitely, it's like a 6-week health spa with just a lot of yelling.
A lot of yelling, but like flute players I know are oftentimes worried that all of the ruggedness is going to affect their embouchure or their fingers. It wasn't quite that
No.
brutal. Okay.
Oh, and whenever you get to your duty station, which is where your band is, they give you adequate time to practice and whatnot. And the beautiful part about the military is the military considers your instrument a tool for your job, so they provide it for you.
Wow.
And for our cases, the Air Force wants you to play the best tool that you can find. So we play on Brannons and Pals. I play on a Miyazawa and Miyazawa flute and a Hamic piccolo. And it was amazing to come out of basic training, and I was fresh out of college. I was playing on a Jupiter de Medici, not even a solid silver body. It was a plated body. I mean, I was playing on like the cheapest flute. And
you still want a job.
I still want a job. I had a Brandon head joint on it, but it was only, like one of the lowest, like under $1,000. I was a college student. And I show up from basic training and I go into the back supply room, and the supply guy shows me the shelf, and there's just a whole shelf of Brandon flutes and piccolos. And he's like, just take them home. He was an old crotchety guy. And I remember I was so proud of myself. I had my new car, and I had my own apartment, and I had $250,000 of flutes buckled into my passenger seat. And I thought, I have the greatest job in the world. I felt like I was my own little flute world in my bedroom with all my Brandon flutes and piccolos lined up on my bed. And he said, if you don't like any of them, we'll just buy you what you want. I was like, what? And that just very quickly became the norm for me. It's the Air Force wants you to have the products you need. And it was always just so humbling, to show up to work and be like, I don't think I like this flute. And they're like, okay. And Yeah, but I mean, to have the ease to get the equipment that you want, to be able to play how you want is essential. And that's basically been it. But I mean, doing that, it makes rehearsal so much fun because you're always playing. And you know, I don't know if I've answered your question,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
yeah.
I'd like to move forward and circle back a little bit. So, you mentioned basic training was a lot of yelling, and sometimes we hear horror stories or see movies that over dramatize. Could you just tell us one of your favorite memories from basic training?
One of my favorite memories. Um, my goodness.
Was there a day that you're like, this is really pretty cool, or was it all pretty much just yelling?
No, I mean, graduation day is obviously like the best day. No, a week before graduation, when I went through, it was 6.5 weeks long. And the week before we graduated, they had what's called Warrior Week, which they consider as a mock deployment. Basically, you go from sleeping in a dorm to sleeping in a tent. And what people don't know is a lot of Air Force basic training is spent in the classroom.
Hmm.
You're not doing a ton of marching. You're not doing a ton of, like I had to fire a gun. I had to go through the gas chamber, but that's one day of your life in basic training. The rest is spent in classrooms learning about the Air Force and, basically learning how to be an adult because many of the kids are coming in out of high school. And at the end of Warrior Week, they have a coining ceremony. The Air Force and the military in general gives you coins as achievements or mementos. And the very first coin that you get in the Air Force is your airman's coin when you are officially you bridge from trainee to airman. And it's after you finish Airman Week and you stand in formation, and your drill sergeants, or we call them TIs, come around and they hand you your coin and they say, "Congratulations, airman. You're no longer trainee." And that was a really special thing, like to realize that after that, you just go through graduation week, which is basically you get to wear your blues and you finally get to see your family and whatnot. So basically, that marks the end of like official training. And, you get to wear your stripes then. And it was really special.
What a great feeling and such an accomplishment and a sense of pride, I'm sure, comes up. So,
Yeah, I may have shed a tear, but I was also tired.
so what is your current day-to-day life like as an Air Force musician?
It is right now it's kind of relaxed. We're going into our summer series, which is a really great time of year. We do concerts down at the National Harbor and also on the Capitol steps. And we do these, 75-minute shows of just really fun outdoor band music. It's movie themes and marches and, Disney songs and, things that are a little bit not as serious. And you get to play outside in the outdoors and your families get to come. And so for me, a typical week is we have 3 rehearsals leading up to a concert, and each rehearsal is 2.5 hours long. And we get our music a week or two in advance, so we're expected to have it prepared. So I'll go into work for 2.5 hours to rehearse. The band runs itself. We each have an administrative duty. I am one of the marketing managers for the concert band. So if there's any office things I need to do, I will take care of it there. But with the wonderful technological advancements of the pandemic, a lot of people can now do their work from home. So if I don't really have anything in the office to do, I will then go home and I will check my email and do what I need to do in the comfort of my own home and in my jammies if I want. And then on concert night, we show up for the concert and we play it, and it's actually a pretty relaxed week. So it's not a typical 9 to 5. We definitely do shift work as we would like to call it. But during the times of year when we are getting ready for tour, like in October and April, we're getting ready to do a 2-week tour. We'll be in work every day doing our 2.5 hour rehearsals, and it's a much busier time. National holidays are busier times for us as well. with if we have a parade or we have to go play at Arlington National Cemetery for final honors and whatnot. So it really depends, but this time of year, it's definitely a lot more relaxed, and I love it because I'm an outdoors kind of person. So I love being able to spend more time in the sunshine and spend time at the pool with my kids.
Well, that sounds great. Now, your nickname, I guess, is PiccNinja, and to be a ninja, I imagine that you have studied with masters and learned from masters past. Could you start by telling us how the name PiccNinja came about?
It is a nickname that the bass trombonist of our band gave me. We were playing Scheherazade, and it was my very first tour with the band after winning the DC job. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but the final movement of Scheherazade, the band arrangement, first of all, it is a half a step up because it's in a band key, as they say. And the final violin hold at the end, that final very, very super high long note, it's in the piccolo part. So I think I have a picture somewhere on social media of me pointing to my part that has 16 whole notes tied together on a high E flat.
High E flat.
High E flat at pianissimo. And which on piccolo, it sounds like a nightmare. And it kind of was. And I had to play it every night for 26 days on this particular tour. And I just thought, well, I won the job, so I'm going to do it. And I did the best I could. And apparently every night, according to the bass trombone player, it got better and better. And he would come off stage and just be like, "You're a ninja. You're a ninja. You're a piccolo ninja." And then other people backstage heard it. And before long, within the week, everybody who saw me would say, "PiccNinja, PiccNinja." And I guess the joke's on them because now I have I have a franchise over it.
And now you have a franchise as PiccNinja.
Yeah.
And that type of playing, especially the super long sustained high E flat on piccolo, pianissimo, and just the duration of it seems somewhere between, it would take meditation or some kind of mental practice to really prepare for that. And in your teaching, mental practice is something that you talk about quite a lot. Is how would you describe your mental preparation for something like that, or just in practice and performance in general?
In the Reader's Digest version is you can't worry about things that are out of your control. You can't worry about what the audience is going to do, how the conductor is going to give you your cue, if the conductor will give you your cue. You can't, there's so many other variables that we get into our heads when really at the end of the day, it's how you play. And as long as you are focusing on the fundamentals that will ensure you can make the proper attack, have a good sound, then there's really nothing else to worry about. That's a lot easier said than done. And there's a whole ton of other exercises and things that, especially in my book, I go into to help you combat those things. But basically, there are so many things that are out of your control. The only thing you have control over is how you play your instrument, how you wiggle your fingers, how you blow your air. And that's basically what happens is when I get into those moments, I just clear the clutter and I do what I do. So, which is I do what I have practiced to do. And if it happens, great. And if it doesn't happen, then I know I need to keep practicing it.
And as a piccolo ninja, piccolo specifically, who are some of the masters that influenced you, that you'd listen to or study from?
I actually never, fun fact, I never owned a piccolo until 2 months before I took my first military band audition. As I said before, I played on a Jupiter de Medici. I played on I had no money. And I used my credit card to purchase my first piccolo from Flute World. And bought a Yamaha 62, and I was so excited. And I went to my first piccolo teacher, who was my flute teacher at Youngstown State, where I did my bachelor's, Catherine Thomas Humble. She's the principal piccoloist of the Youngstown Symphony Orchestra. And she's the one who basically taught me how to blow into the piccolo and how to think about blowing into the piccolo. And she's the one who really set the foundation for how you approach the piccolo and how similar it is to flute. And then from there, I won the job so fast, I didn't really have time to, I just kind of learned as I learned as I went along. I bought a lot of books on how to play piccolo, piccolo excerpts, alternate fingerings, and yeah, I just listened to a lot of people. Jennifer Gunn, who was then Jen Hackett back when I knew her, she had just won the Chicago Symphony job shortly after I had moved to Dayton with my regional band job, and got to hear her every chance I got when I would go up to Chicago on tour. And yeah, just and then YouTube started to explode, and yeah, so that's basically, I don't have a ton of influences other than whatever I was able to get my hands on, or whatever I was able to put into my ears or read.
You mentioned a few books. Are there any specific piccolo books that you use or would recommend?
This is so embarrassing. I'm doing this on video. I cannot remember the name of it, but it's like the Piccolo Handbook, and it has all the alternate fingerings and whatnot. I keep that book in my bag. I pull it out in rehearsal on a daily basis. The Trevor Y. Piccolo book, the Kujala, and anything Kujala, obviously. The Vadi Mecum and whatnot, I just copy, cut, pasted onto piccolo, even with all of his alternate fingerings and whatnot. A lot of them are applicable to the piccolo, and that's basically just learning by trial and error a lot, which unfortunately, when you play a color instrument, is what you have to do.
So we're approaching what we're calling Piccolo Preparation Month, which is harder for me to say than I expected. 4th of July is coming up, and many of our flute community members, whether they're in Solo of the Month or otherwise, will be preparing piccolo for outdoor performances. Do you have any general suggestions of piccolo practice, things that you'd make sure that you did before a concert or as you're getting ready to rehearse?
When it comes to basic sound, in my opinion, because it is a color instrument, meaning it is there to provide the cherry on top with the sound. It's there to provide the sparkle, or it gets paired with other funny instruments like soprano saxophone, or oftentimes it copies principal trumpet. It gets, on the very exposed parts. I feel like sound and color is everything. Because a piccolo, everybody knows the joke of, how do you get two piccolos to tune? And it's the truth. A piccolo can really make or break a band. And I don't say that to scare people. It's, if anything, I look at it as a challenge, a really good challenge to have a lot of fun with. It's a completely different material of an instrument compared to the flute. So there's a lot of color, there's a lot of variations. There's so many different kinds of woods and everything you can play on. Have fun with it. And embrace the moments when you are going to be exposed, and try and crawl into the sound that you're playing with. And so when I'm getting ready for a concert, I focus on my sound. I focus on my embouchure placement. I like to think the word pour, like kind of like a bird beak. Yeah, pour. I place the piccolo higher on my lower lip. When I'm teaching students how to play piccolo initially, I tell them to take the far edge of the embouchure hole and line it up with the top red of their lip, and then just simply roll the piccolo down. And that's generally a very natural placement to start with the piccolo in terms of blowing. And then to think of when they're playing like a middle E flat on the piccolo in the staff would sound and also feel like playing a high E flat on the flute. So you're basically approaching a third register embouchure. That's a lot easier to play on the flute because it's such a smaller instrument. So everything is smaller, but the airspeed stays the same. It's just the embouchure hole is smaller. Everything's more refined, more I don't want to say angular. It just has to be a little bit more precise. And it's nothing to give yourself a complex over because it is a different instrument. And so you have to be patient with it, and you have to learn its tendencies. It's a very moody instrument, so you have to befriend it. Sometimes you have to go find a new friend with a different model or a different head joint. But when you find that, that little BFF pairing that you get, it is a very fun instrument, and it's very easy to approach and warm up on and ultimately play.
You mentioned how sometimes the second octave on piccolo feels like the third octave in the flute. So do you have any more advice on how to think about the sound production on the third octave of the piccolo?
I go back to harmonics. Everything is on the flute is based off of harmonics. If you think about the fingerings in the third octave, a lot of them are basic fingerings with just an extra key, or what I like to call like no fail fingerings, but they're very similar to the lower octave. And really all you're doing is overblowing it. So when you're thinking of the sound production, practice harmonics on the piccolo as well, and really find, don't really move on from a harmonic until you have really gotten the richest sound. Meaning I like to feel the actual bore of the instrument vibrating in my fingers, and if you really lock it in, you'll feel it. And when it happens, you'll also feel and hear the sound actually surround you acoustically. Acoustics are so neat. But that's really what happens. And when it happens, it does feel like this aha moment. It feels like your sound explodes and you're not doing anything at all. And that is just the coolest feeling when that happens. And those who have achieved it know exactly what I'm talking about. But when that happens, you can hear the overtones, you can hear the colors, and it just, everything within that range suddenly locks in, and it becomes effortless. So I would focus on the harmonics first and really take your time with them. If you do nothing for a half hour a day, have fun with your harmonics.
That sounds great. So you mentioned some fingerings. Do you use a lot of alternate fingerings? Are there any that are must-know fingerings for piccolo?
Oh gosh, for piccolo, I don't use a ton. I also play on an instrument that has, like the G sharp, like it has, like the split E and whatnot. So for me, one of my go-tos is it's a very this is very typical of harmonic piccolos, but the high A on a harmonic piccolo is extremely sharp. So what I actually like to do, one of my favorite fingerings, and it's actually very easy to get when you're working on the scale, is a high A flat fingering or a high G sharp fingering with the first trill down. Actually creates an in tune A. And I can play it at mostly any volume. I can really play it fortissimo, or I can play it softer, and it sounds, I just keep the pinky up, and that is one of my go-tos. I really don't play high A fingering anymore on my harmonic piccolo. Another tricky one is C sharp, like right above the staff. I like to do the instead of just the regular open C sharp fingering, if it's incredibly flat, I will do the all the fingers down minus the thumb and pinky. I'll do that one to lift the pitch up a little more. It also creates a different color. So I will play an open C sharp depending on what instrument I'm playing with. If I play with trumpets, I'll play an open C sharp. If I play with the woodwinds, I'm going to play the alternate fingering because it blends better.
So in your warm-up, would you use regular fingerings and then just use the alternate fingerings if you need, or do you usually practice the alternate fingerings in your daily practice as well?
In my warm-ups, I do regular fingerings. because except for the high A, which it's just such a bad note that I have incorporated that into my piccolo practice. I don't use that fingering on flute. So that's basically how I've done it, is the fingerings that I know I need to use all the time. I've incorporated them just so I technically have proficiency at it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it will help me with my piccolo practice, which I'm going to try to start doing more regularly now as well, especially getting ready for this June piccolo preparation month with solo on the song, solo of the month. So solo of the month is a community of flute players of all levels. We come together to practice and learn, just in a sense of togetherness, to share our love of flute, to grow together. And we're really excited that you're actually going to be working with the group and those who even if they're not in the group and want to be part of that. With the thought that many of our group are amateurs, do you have any just general advice of keeping a positive attitude when being challenged to do something different, like play piccolo or learn harder music? Or what would be the mental preparation of just keeping that positive attitude for our amateur members?
Oh, this is something that I got told by a student recently, was actually life changing, which I thought, but ask yourself how you are talking to yourself. So we think of self-talk. What is the first, if somebody were to say, Matthew, you got to play piccolo tonight. Are you going, oh my God, I'm terrible at piccolo? How are you self-talking to yourself? And if it's like, oh my God, how can we reframe it into, I don't want to say positive, because it's not always going to be rainbows and unicorns, but how can we reframe it into a more productive line? Okay, I'm not great at piccolo. This is an opportunity for me. This is those kind of things. If you are working on something and you mess up a passage or you miss a note, how are you approaching, or how are you criticizing yourself whenever you make that mistake? Are you actually criticizing yourself by going, I knew I was going to miss that, or God, I'm just so bad at that passage? Or are you saying, that is a challenge for me, I need to, or this is a passage that is tricky, I need to focus on maybe landing on this note in that passage, or I should probably slow this tempo. It's how you frame it creates your reality. And that's really what it comes down to. When you have anything challenging, just because you frame it differently doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get it, but you will rewire your brain to basically not be so afraid of it, to, approach it as a problem to be solved rather than just a hurdle that you're always going to run into. So how you self-talk to yourself is extremely important, and take notes on how you're self-talking to yourself whenever you miss a note or whatnot, and write it down and go back and look at it later after your practice session is over and see if you're actually calling yourself names. And if you are, how can you not call yourself names and rework it into a way that will actually be productive in the future?
That's fantastic advice. And I think self-talk is quite important. With that thought in mind, I know that over my years of experience, I've learned a lot. And sometimes I think, well, if I knew then what I know now, things would be different. So in the essence of self-talk, if you could give your own self, your 14-year-old self, a couple of words of wisdom, what would you tell yourself as a teenager?
That's a really good question. Well, first of all, I would say, embrace your nerdiness.
Hey, Megan, embrace your nerdiness. Does it feel good to say that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was a band nerd, I was an athlete in high school and whatnot. I was ultimately an athlete in college, but in some ways, society, can, just poo-poo, being a musician. And no, I embrace it. You have been given a talent from the powers that be, whether it be God or the universe, however you want to look at it. And you've been given the opportunity to use it. So enjoy it. So don't be afraid to say, I play flute and I really like it. And I'm learning this new solo and it's so cool. And everyone can eye roll all they want. And as long as you keep smiling, that's all that matters. And then I think in terms of becoming a better musician, what I would tell myself is don't ever be afraid to ask the dumb questions. Learn how to use a tuner. Learn how to use a metronome. Just because you own it doesn't mean you're automatically given the skills to use it. And that is often done through recording yourself and learning how and where your tendencies are. So taking those tools to your teacher and saying, teach me, how do I listen to know if I'm sharp or flat? How do I listen to learn if I'm rushing or slowing down? And have your teacher record you and have them sit down with you and show you. And if they don't, call me. I will teach you how to do it. Because that really is the foundation of building a good practice. So, don't be afraid to embrace the nerdiness and also the nerdiness with your equipment and learning how to become a better flute player through using that equipment as well. That's what I would tell myself.
Fantastic advice. And I hope that 14-year-old Megan is listening a bit too. And I know that 14-year-old Matthew is just got excited, and I'm ready now that I'm a bit older than 14 to still be a band nerd and embrace my nerdiness and tell my friends who aren't interested in music how excited I am to start practicing piccolo this month of June, with the excitement of being able to work with you on it as well. So Megan, thank you so much for your time and your insight today. This has been really wonderful to get to know you a little bit more and to be able to pick your brain a bit.
Oh,
And we at Solo of the Month and Flute World really look forward to everything that we're going to continue to learn from and with you through the month of June and beyond.
thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun, and I can't wait to work with all of you next month.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.